Hello, Equestrian Adventuresses! Welcome to the community! On today's episode, I talk to Kat from the UK about her adventures on horseback in Colombia. This is a very exciting episode. We talk about her experiences riding mules, which she didn't think she would have ever done in her life. We talk about her gap year working in New Zealand with Polo Ponies, and she also shares a story with us about how she came to Colombia and a random boat ride that she took to a small island where there was a boat and she thought she was going to be attacked by pirates. So, very exciting episode today. Before we get started, I want to take a moment and ask you to subscribe to our podcast and leave us a review so that others can find us. Check out our website for our podcast episode show notes and to read articles from amazing women having adventures on horseback just like you. Today's episode is brought to you by Chamdwala. Check out their website for their handmade leather goods, including saddles, bridles, stylish leather bags, and polo belts. My absolute favorite is their polo bridle, which comes in all sorts of bright colors. It's the perfect accessory for your beloved horsey, even when you don't play polo. Check out their website at chamdwala.com. That's ChamDewallah.com. As usual, you can find the link in our show notes on equestrianadventuresses.com/podcast. Be sure to join our Facebook group if you haven't already. This year, I will be traveling to some exciting destinations to film our upcoming YouTube documentary series, so be sure to keep checking in on our website for updates. And lastly, if you love what we do at EQA and you want to support us to help us continue to bring all this amazing free content, please consider becoming our premium member. For as little as a cup of coffee each month, your support really makes a difference. As a premium member, you'll have access to all of our bonus podcast episodes, our bonus YouTube behind-the-scenes footage, bloopers, all kinds of extra fun things. Check it out on our show notes and in our website at equestrianadventuresses.com. Thanks for listening, and cue the music. We are explorers. We are trailblazers. We love to do what cannot be done. We love to test our limits, cross borders, and we love the freedom horses bring us. We seek lands without fences. Who are we? We are equestrian adventuresses. We are a community of women who love horses, travel, and adventure.
To infinity and beyond!
And now your host, Crystal Kelly!
Hello, adventuresses. I'm your host, Crystal Kelly, and today I'm talking to Kat, or Katriona, and she's actually based in the UK. So we're having a little chat today about her recent adventures. So, hi, Kat.
Hi.
All right, so tell us a little bit about yourself before we jump into the very exciting stuff. Where are you from and how you got into horses?
Cool. Yeah. So I'm based in Wales in the UK, which is a very, very pretty part of the UK. And I've been riding pretty much all my life. So I did pony club, and we had to kind of pony club horses and did lots of, I guess, trail riding around the UK. And then I started playing polo when I was about 17, and was absolutely hooked on that. And then started, I guess I went to New Zealand for a year to play some polo, and then did my university degree and kind of played throughout that. And after uni, I decided to kind of travel more and ride kind of in lots of exciting places all over the world. And as you kind of just said, I just got back from Colombia. So I was just out there with 14, well, we did a polo, we were out playing polo for a couple of weeks, and then there was 14 of us that rode through Colombia as well, which was super fun.
This is very exciting. Actually, I can relate to the polo addiction because a few years ago when I was working in Egypt, I was working with the show jumping stables, and I sort of got voluntold at the local polo club to ride a polo pony. And it was like so addictive that I was hooked after that. And I just like was always coming to the polo club and then eventually like swapped to work there.
Yeah, I think it's one of the most If you're a rider out there and you haven't tried polo, it's definitely one to give a go, because it's the horses are just they're machines. They are incredible. They're so well behaved, but like they're so like easy to the touch. They're kind of, I guess, like cattle riding horses might be a good example, maybe.
Yeah, they're like Ferraris, they're like, they drive like unbelievable. They stop, they turn, they go fast, they go slow, they're just like really controllable. And then they ride off, like they bump into each other, and it's just like so much, it's such a different vibe, I think. And what else did you like about polo? Like, when did you start the polo thing?
So I actually had a friend of mine, who I don't think my mum's ever forgiven. He came back from his gap year and just said, "Come on, Kat, I gotta like take you to try this new sport." And I was like, "Okay." And the second I tried it, I was like, "I've got to get more of this."
Right.
And then so that was around 17, and then I decided to do my gap year so the first time I kind of really got to play a lot of polo was in my gap year in New Zealand. So I went out there for a year and kind of worked on a polo farm, and then and got free polo for the privilege of kind of looking after the horses and stuff.
Very cool. So you're in New Zealand. Is this sort of your first trip overseas, or your first time away from home, or how did that work?
Yeah, so I've been really lucky to travel a lot growing up, just kind of summer holidays and that stuff with parents. But this was my first trip by myself, especially for like a long period of time.
And how old were you at the time?
18.
So you're in New Zealand, you're all alone, you're at a horse stables playing polo. Like, what was that feeling like? Like, what did you think? Did you just look around like, wow, how did I end up here?
Yeah, I had the best year ever. It was just incredible. So yeah, really, really just, it's funny because you look back on these times at just being so much fun. But yeah, you just can't, I don't know how to describe, it was freedom, I guess, is the best way to describe it, because you've got freedom from, I guess, being at school and all of that kind of stuff, but also the freedom of kind of being in this environment. So, I mean, we were riding every single day on these incredible horses, and then the way it works in New Zealand, which is very different, actually, I think, to pretty much anywhere else in the world with polo. So at the time in the South Island, we were basically doing every weekend, everyone in the whole of the South Island would get together and play polo together, which was just incredible. So from all over the South Island, people on their horses would just come and be together and have a big party, and you'd play polo, and it was just so much fun.
And so I know because England is so close to Europe, and it's like really easy to just pop into Spain, but you chose to go on your gap year to New Zealand, which is quite far from home. I mean, was your family like, oh no, were they nervous or worried, or?
No, I've always been quite good at kind of going off by myself, and so I think they were. And my sister, I've got an older sister, so she went off to Africa for her gap year. So I think
so New Zealand was kind of not a big deal then.
It was actually pretty kind of easy for them. They were like, yeah, that's fine.
Right, it's safe there.
Yeah.
Cool. So you did your gap year, and then what happened after that? You said you started bouncing around, or?
Yeah, so I did, I was at uni and I ran the polo club there, and then I worked actually afterwards. So I worked for 3 years in banking, in mobile banking, which was a bit odd, and I just couldn't quite kind of, I don't know, I couldn't settle in it. So I just quit my job and moved to Colombia. Okay. As you do, which lots of people said I was mad doing, but I think it was the best decision of my life. While I was out there, I just absolutely fell in love with Colombia. It's just the coolest, most incredible country. So this was probably 6 years ago. And when I was out there, I didn't really know what I was going to do kind of post being in Colombia. And I met some really cool people. It was very So Colombia still hadn't actually passed its peace treaty at this point, but it was becoming a country that a lot of backpackers were going to. So people were starting to travel there and seeing how amazing it was. And so I kind of teamed up with some friends to try and bring people from the UK to Colombia to kind of introduce them to polo holidays, riding holidays, or just generally kind of basically trying to get people to go and see this really, really cool country.
So then when you were banking, you said, and did you just book a flight to Colombia, like randomly, or was there an intention, like, I'm going to move to this country? Or, how did that conversation happen? Like, how did that start?
Yeah,
why Colombia?
Well, originally, I've got a very good friend. So I went to kindergarten with a girl called Jean Jardine, and she had moved to Colombia with her now husband, at the time boyfriend, and they had moved up into the jungle. And so she kind of was like, okay, you got to come see me. So this was while I was still working in the banks. And I was like, okay, cool. So booked everything. We were going to meet up and go and do this really cool tour of Colombia. And then probably, I guess, 3 days before I was meant to leave England, I got a phone call from her saying, look, something's gone wrong with the business. Like, I can't meet you in Bogota anymore. And I was like, look, don't worry, just where are you? And I'll come to see you. And so she was in this place called Santa Marta, which is this gorgeous little fishing town in Colombia. So I Googled it. It's like hot, really nice fishing town in the Caribbean coast. I was like, perfect, I'll just fly there. So I did. And bear in mind, Jean and I grew up for about from 3 to 6 in the Lake District. And we were basically told that if we rode our bikes up and down the drive 7 times, we'll get an extra fish finger. So we were outdoors girls, and we loved kind of the great outdoors. And my time in London, I'd been turned into kind of, I guess, a London banking girl.
An office person, yeah.
Yeah. And so I rocked up, and I was in like these pink jeans with black suede, like short boots, like a pretty top. And I was like, okay, coast. She was like, what are you wearing? I was like, I don't know. And she was like, come on, off we go. And we went, and I hopped on, she took us to this place where there were all these motorbikes. And I was like, oh no. She was like, on your hop. So me and her got on the back of what in Colombia is known as a moto taxi. So it's a taxi, but it's a motorbike because they can get up into the mountains. Right. And so off we went. We were going for a good kind of 20 to 40 minutes on these motorbikes till we got to this little town called Minca. And when we got there, I mean, at this time, so this was 5-6 years ago, there was no tourism in this area at all. And so there were all these Colombians like, what is this white blonde chick doing here in her like pink jeans and suede boots? I was like, hi. And I was like, great, we're here. And she was like, no, we're just going to have a beer because you're going to need one. I was like, okay.
The encouraging words of a friend.
That's great. And so we had a beer, and we got back on. We actually swapped moto taxis. So the guys that had taken us to this point weren't competent enough riders to get us up the next bit. And I was like, oh God. Oh, we literally did another 40 minutes in the jungle up into these mountains. And it was rainy season. The roads, there weren't roads. It was proper jungle, waterfalls on one side, like jungle on the other.
So did you, I know it was your friend, but did you have a moment of like, oh no, I'm in, I don't know, drug lord territory and I'm going to die in the jungle? Or, did you have any fears, or were you just kind of going with it?
Like, I was laughing. It's like probably the first time, because we had to get off these motorbikes and like push them. I was like black, like, and they're just covered from head to toe in mud. And because you just, and I felt for the first time in a long time like me again. And I think so when we finally got up there, it's just, the views were incredible. You could see it was, I don't know if you know much about Colombia, but it's got the highest coastal mountain in the world, which is what we were climbing up in motorbikes.
Okay, so you had a rewarding view at the end of it.
Yeah. And I trusted Jean, like 100%. And these guys, I mean, I think there's a point that you go, why haven't I done this for such a long time, you know?
Right.
And I think like if you're a girl with an adventure in their like spirit, then, you know, those kind of things you embrace and you have to trust. Otherwise you're never gonna
Well,
do
definitely. I mean, I know sometimes when I would talk to like my childhood friends from America or something, and I'll tell them stories of like, you know, like you said, I'm sure it was a difficult struggle. You know, like you said, you're pushing the bikes uphill, and you know, it's like you could very easily see it as like a negative experience. But I think that's sort of the nature of the adventurous is we know, you know, that the bad times or those difficult situations or the challenging moments is actually part of the fun. And it's so much easier to just laugh and like look at the ridiculousness of the situation and be like, you know what, that's what I'm living for.
Absolutely. And I think that's part of kind of, I guess, why we do what we do, and why, for me, trying to show people, like, I get most joy from taking people to these places that they would maybe think was really dangerous or kind of, because Colombia is still seen as quite a dangerous country, or maybe somewhere they think this is so far out of my comfort zone, right. And just showing them that it's not, you know, like it's so much fun and it gives you so much joy to kind of go to these really remote places and really experience something that is, I guess, more special than, not just without tourists, you know, somewhere that's completely unspoilt, which is really hard to find in the world at the moment.
No, definitely. So then culturally, you know, is it just a bunch of men and then here you rock up like a woman and you're riding horses and playing polo? How do the locals see, you know, you and the other ladies that are riding? Or do they embrace it?
Well, so I think, yeah, definitely the countries you go to are very men heavy in terms of the riding. So in the polo, for example, when I moved to Colombia, I played polo almost every day in Bogota, and I think, like, me and one other girl, we were the first two women to play with men in Colombia. Okay. So they kind of had other girls that played, but it was really not seen as kind of the thing to do. And we now, so we've just come back with this big women's tournaments. The women are playing with the men in a really, really good level. So it's amazing. It's grown so much, and the attitude has completely changed from kind of 5 years ago. So that, I mean, it's really exciting now to see the women kind of, especially, they're also really good, you know? So you've got the women playing polo, but they're at a really good level, where they're actually able to compete with the men. And
are these Colombian women, or are you bringing sort of international women? So it's both, or?
It's both, yeah, it's a mix. So, and we actually took the First Ladies team from the UK out to Colombia probably 4 years ago to play against some of these women. And the standard then was still, it was like, okay, there was probably 3 or 4 girls that could play really good polo.
Okay.
Whereas now, so about 3 weeks ago, there was a big ladies tournament and there were 8 teams and they were all really good.
Wow. Amazing. So you're actually sparking change by what you do.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it is just people seeing that it's possible, you know? So a huge amount, there's Botritos Polo Club who we work with out there. And they are fantastic because they kind of work with the ground routes. So they work with the kids and pushing the kids through to become better and better, which is really, really exciting. And also, I think I don't think you'd necessarily think of Colombia as like a horse country, maybe. But the passion for the horses out there and kind of how like everyone has got horses out there. I think for me, from a lot of the countries that I've been to, the kind of diversity of what you can do on horses is huge. And one of the things we actually do with the people we take to Colombia is we go to the Pasofino stables. And in Colombia, it's one of like their most prized horses is the Pasofino's horses. And I guess the equivalent would be like going to one of the top show jumping yards in the UK. But in Colombia, they're like, this is the number one Pasofino horse that has won everything for the last 3 years. Who wants to ride her?
Wow, very cool. So they're breeding the Pasofinos.
You're seriously gonna let me on? You're like,
right?
Yeah, they have the Pasofino competitions, and it's interesting because they have one competition is judging the horse and one competition is judging the rider, and they say when the Pasofino horse is perfect, you should be able to carry a cup of full coffee and not spill a drop.
And did you try this?
No, because my riding is not good enough.
Because the Pasofinos, they're gated, so they're like supposed to be very smooth horses to ride.
Yeah, exactly. So they've got a fifth gate, and it's funny because a lot of people will kind of say, "Oh, isn't that cruel?" But I guess it's like the Icelandic Tolt, or trying to think of another one. But yeah, so they're born with it. So we actually saw the foals, and you could see the Pasofino gait in the foals as they trot around.
I can imagine that's pretty cute to see.
So cute. They're amazing. And you're just like, yeah, so it's a really cool, and you can see the passion that the Colombians have for these horses is just, well, the passion that Colombians have in general is amazing. But then when you get them talking about their horses, you're just like, okay, I've fallen in love all over again with horses.
Right. So then, back to the first day that you landed in Colombia and you're pushing your bike up this mountain and you're looking at the beautiful view, when did you go from that to, I'm gonna, I don't know, start a polo thing here or ride here? Like, when did you make that shift of, let's live here?
Yeah, so I spent 2 weeks kind of in the jungle and exploring Colombia with Jean and another girl, Amelia. And we just had so much fun. And I think anyone that goes to Colombia, you kind of, you something about it, there's this passion that runs through the country kind of infects you almost. And the tagline of Colombia is the only risk is not wanting to leave. And when I got back to London after this trip, I just kind of looked around, and I mean, not to take anything away from people that have an office job, but the people, or my friends, and I guess a lot of the people I was working with, seemed almost to be lying to themselves or trying to convince themselves that having this job and getting a house and being tied to a house and, having the money was what life was all about.
Right. That's somehow more important than experiences or memories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. And something in me just clicked and I just quit. Pretty much about a week later after coming back from Colombia, I was like, nope, can't do this anymore, quit, and bought a one-way ticket to Colombia.
And most people, they would justify reasons not to do that. So, for example, I would say the number one concern is like, oh, well, how will I earn money?
Mm-hmm.
Like you're working this steady job, you have a regular salary, and then you just quit. And now it's like you don't have any money and you're flying to a country. What did you think about that whole situation of money? Were you just like, did you have a little bit of a nest egg, like, you know what, I'll be fine? Or were you already having this, like, I'm going to find something else to replace my money income?
When I quit and left, I'd been saving for a house, but actually at the time there was no way, even with all this money, I was going to be able to buy a house. So, it would have been another 5 years. So I thought, well, why not do something more useful with it? So I had that as my cushion. And I honestly, when I left, I thought I'd come back.
Okay.
So when I quit and I went kind of like, I guess in my mind and probably to calm everyone else around me,
Right.
mainly the family. It was, look, if the worst comes to worst, I've got a degree, I've got, years of experience in banking, I can get another job.
Right. Yeah.
That was kind of, I guess,
fallback. Yeah.
Yeah, which never happened. But
right.
I think also if you are, it's really, really hard to start something new if you have an income, because to lose that income it's actually a lot harder to do that. Whereas at the time I had no responsibility. So I was quite young. I didn't have a house. I didn't have a husband or children or anything like that. So there was nothing to stop me from, I wasn't losing anything and I didn't have to support anyone but myself. So I know that definitely that's easier. Like if I had a house and a mortgage and kids to look after, it's going to be a totally different story. So yeah, I was definitely at a stage of my life where it was a lot easier for me.
Yeah, nothing to lose kind of an attitude.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, I did something very similar when I had an apartment and a job and a truck and all this stuff in America, and I just, like, what do I need it for? I got rid of everything. I either sold it or donated it, and I just packed what I could fit in a suitcase, and I left, and like you, I never went back. So
yep.
I think it always seems more difficult or complicated than it is when you're living that moment, when you're working that job or something. It seems very scary.
Yeah.
But then once you do it, once you book the ticket and you just go, things just seem to fall into place, at least from what I've experienced. Did you feel something like that as well?
Yeah, 100%. I think it's, if you're open to opportunities, they'll show themselves to you. So I think that's maybe the biggest thing. So you kind of got, and often if you think you've got this very fixed life path, that's going to be the one, then when other opportunities show themselves to you, you might not even see them or be open to them because they're not kind of on the road that you're meant to be on. Whereas if you don't have a fixed idea of exactly what you want for your life, then when these opportunities come to you, you kind of say, okay, this is awesome. Let's give that a try, or let's go over. I mean, I'm sure, from your adventures and going around the world, some of the best things you've ever done have been just completely out of the blue, and someone said, come with me, let's give this a go. And providing you're willing to say yes, then
exactly.
You've got a cool adventure there.
Yeah, random adventures, the not planned ones, those are usually the best experiences, definitely. So what was your opportunity, when you went to Colombia? What was your opportunity that you sort of saw it and you took it and it sort of manifested into what your life is now?
Yeah, so I guess I did 3 months out there where I was just traveling. I was mainly based in Bogota, which is the capital of Colombia. And I love to actually really live and get to know a country by being there and being around the people. So I it was mainly through the Polo Club, and I met a girl out there who kind of said, why don't you bring people out here? And I'd met, so through the Polo Club and the guys we now work with for the Polo, also met, I got taken out. They were like, oh, we're doing this endurance race. Do you want to come? And I was like, I've not done endurance like that much before. They're like, you can do the kids one. I was like, okay, I'll do the kids one. So I got given, so that was again one of these kind of, do you want to come and just have a go? And so with that, I went out and met all these guys that were, they ran a kids riding camp, but didn't do any tourism at the time. And so we kind of got chatting and said, what happens if we brought people from the UK out here, and we did some cool riding holidays as well. And then we also had all the contacts that we've got in the coast. We had got friends down in the Amazon. So I think, we just I'd just been very, very lucky to have met all these people and seen all these incredible places. And I was like, I'd love to just show people this, and that's kind of where it all started. And I went back to the UK and basically went round and was kind of like, anyone want to go to Colombia?
and did some of them, look at you like you're crazy? Like, what? If I go there, I'll die, or.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we had one. We took in our first year. We took 2 groups, but we had 3 groups booked in, and one of the groups cancelled last minute. It was a student group, and the parents just said, no, it's too dangerous, we're not sending our kids there. And this was like 2 weeks before we were going to go. I was like, what?
Oh, wow.
So that was kind of a strong learning curve. And then we took this women's polo group, and we took a student group that did kind of a mix of polo riding, and we went to the coast. So that was, I guess our first trips out there, and that was kind of where it all started.
And was it in the beginning? Was it people that you knew directly, or was it people that you had somehow convinced, or how did you find these people?
Yeah, no, it was definitely people we'd found and convinced. So it was. I think I don't know if you've found this. I've actually in the last year has been when I've started taking friends and family on trips, because I think when you're starting, it's really hard to kind of say to people, look, this is what we're doing. Do you want to pay for it? And they're like, well, why can't I have it for free?
Right.
You're like, well, there's quite a lot of work that goes into all of this. So it was, I guess it was also showing people that this is a real kind of thing. Like because I really wanted to just specialize in kind of taking people, so actually being on the trips myself, so that you could really kind of explain a country. And also Colombia is quite interesting. So even with the last group we took, stuff's changing all the time, and this is the case in pretty much all the countries we take people to. So I don't know, hotels close down a week before you take people, or stuff like people change their minds and say, actually you can't do this activity, or so an itinerary is constantly in the flow, I guess.
Yeah.
And so you've got to be really, really on it to make sure. And I mean, always people get what they've booked, but just maybe not what you booked.
Right.
A year ago. So I think that's kind of, and just, I guess being, kind of telling people stories about your time and introducing them to people that are now really good friends. So that for me is really exciting, I guess. And, yeah.
Yeah, no, it's very exciting, especially because I think, as you were mentioning, especially, you're a woman and you're trying to convince people to pay money to do this thing on the faith that you've done it and that you've sort of organized and arranged everything. And I think to try and make that transition of, as you said, people paying money for that, I think it can be very difficult to navigate when you're first starting out. So do you have any advice, or what did you sort of do to make that happen?
Honestly, I would say you just got to keep going. And that sounds really crazy, but part of it is, one, if you do get people that go on the trips, you've got to make it amazing, right? So we have 80% retention of clients, which is how our company's grown. So you've got to persuade people that going with you is better than going with anyone else.
Right.
So I think that's once you've persuaded them to go, that's your make or break moment. Persuading people to go, you just have to believe in what you're doing. So if you can, I absolutely love the countries that we work in. I totally believe in the people that we work with, and I love showing people, Colombia or Mongolia or these incredible countries. And I think if you're not really passionate about the place that you're taking people, then they won't believe that they should go.
No, definitely. And I can definitely hear, you know, in your voice when you're talking about Colombia, how excited you are. I mean, I'm already like, when can I book my flight? So I think that that's really great. And especially for women, like you said, for us to go with other women and have a ladies polo match, like that just sounds so amazing. And, you know, that would be, I think, an awesome adventure. So you go every year, or you're living there full time, or how does this work out for you?
No, so we go, I've been every year since I moved there, taking so we've done small groups. We've actually found, so after we took our first groups, we then started taking those groups to other destinations because they wanted to go and see some other places. And we found Colombia as a destination has been quite hard to sell because people are a bit worried about it. But as of last year and this year, it's starting again to become like or people are now believing
it's trendy. Yeah,
it's trending again.
Yeah.
So it's really exciting. So basically the last 5 years worth of work have now started to pay off. So we've just been out there for 6 weeks, and we're going back out in September, and we've got groups booked in for next year as well. And interestingly, the group that just went now, the first couple of days, they were kind of like, you know, it's really interesting to go and see Colombia, but, you know, we probably don't want to come back. So it'd be really interesting to know other destinations that you do. And it's like, okay. By the end of the week, they were like, we love Colombia. When actually looking to book. So some of them are looking to come back next year, and then the rest of them are coming back 2021. Because I guess one of the things is it's not like a lot of countries. It's not. It's really different to it in terms. So Colombia is huge. I don't know, like from Bogota to the Pacific coast is the same distance as from the UK to Germany.
Okay.
And then there's a whole area. So if you actually look at a map of Colombia, if you go south of Bogota for a while, if you look at a map, after like almost half of Bogota doesn't have half of Colombia doesn't have roads.
Okay, and you mean like it's not even a gravel road or a dirt road, or it's just it's jungle.
Yeah, it's literally the Amazon jungle.
Okay.
Or jungle, and then but so much of that, and then so it's huge. And what's also really interesting, so it's on the equator, so it doesn't have seasons. So all year round, pretty much the weather is the same. You have rainy seasons, but depending on where you are, depends on whether or not you actually get affected by that. And you can be in Bogota, which is really high. So Bogota is 2,800 meters. And then you can drive down for 2 hours, and it's quite cold. So Bogota's kind of, imagine the whole of the UK English weather in one day is what you'll get.
And is it like a cold rain, or is it a hot rain?
Bogota's bizarre. So you'll wake up and it could be really hot. So it can be like 25 degrees. So hot in terms of Bogota. And then you go out, and then later it rains, like really rains hard. And then it could be cold or hot again. So everyone that you see in Bogota will have jeans on, a t-shirt, they'll be carrying a jumper, and they'll have an umbrella. Like, it's just
so kind of like England, actually.
Yeah, completely. But you can drive 2 hours to one of the places we go to, which is called Villeta, and it's tropical. It's boiling. It's like swimming. There's swimming pools everywhere. It's so hot, and that's just a 2 hour drive, and it will be like that all year round. Wow.
And so, you know, what are the horses like that you come across? I know you said they value their Pasafinos, but, you know, in general, like what are the sort of horses that you come across, and what's the horse culture like?
Yeah, they're amazing. So I guess their breed would be, well, they've got the Pasifino, but they've got the Colombian Criollo horse, which I guess imagine, do you know the Argentine Criollo?
Yeah, they're like this cool
Little,
mouse color usually,
yeah, they're
right?
quite small. So they're small, I guess with big bums, quite uh I guess like really together. So don't imagine like a big long thoroughbred stride, but really like nice and
Stocky.
together.
Mm.
They often will have a bit of Pasifino in them, so they trot, but they are so sure-footed. I mean, and they are very, very light on the mouths. So the ones we ride when we go trail riding are just amazing. So they're fast if you want to go for a nice canter, but they're really, really responsive. So they'll stop without even kind of like question. They have really good lateral movement. But what's so amazing is how sure-footed they are. So they can go up and down these tracks that you'd just never even imagine doing in the UK. And you're kind of sat there going, do I really want to do this track? this is quite steep. So the group we were just out with were hunters. So they were a group from a local UK hunt, and they're really, really good riders.
And they're brave.
Brave, yeah, right. So brave. And so we were like, okay, let's make it a bit more interesting. Let's make it some of the trails a bit more challenging. So we have like for less experienced riders, we have easier routes, and then as you get more experience, we can kind of like push you a bit more and make it a bit more interesting. And gee, these horses, I mean, everyone by the end they were just in love with their horses. And I was actually really lucky. So they have this big mule culture as well, which is, have you ever ridden a mule?
I actually haven't, no.
Okay, so kind of, I guess, what would you think a mule would be like?
I mean, the stereotypical that they're stubborn and that they, you'll ask them to go so they'll stop, or, just something like that.
Yeah, right? So I was kind of like, why would anyone want to ride a mule? And Chalice was like, no, Kat, seriously, like, just, you haven't ridden one yet, like, just give them a try. And I was like, fine, I'll ride this mule. Oh my God, if I could take her home, I would. She was phenomenal. So she used to be a cattle herding mule. I didn't even know that could happen.
Okay.
And she was awesome. Because they're really, really sure-footed. She was fast, but she lateral movement was amazing. Like she was fantastic. I just absolutely loved her. And so smooth as well. So her canter was really smooth. And she was just super, super fun to ride. So yeah, I was like, I love her. And they have in Colombia in the south, once a year they have this massive mule festival, I suppose. And like thousands and thousands and thousands of mules. So people will take their mules to this festival and they'll ride for like 3 days across this area of Colombia. Like just all these mules together, like drinking and having a big party. And I really want to go and do that one day. But it's just, you kind of think, they must love their mules because they have
Right.
this big mule.
It sounds exciting.
Yeah, so that was quite fun. So we had a couple of mules and then mainly horses, but another lady on the ride, she also rode a mule and she loved it. She was riding on the first day she rode a horse, but it was she didn't get on with it, so we changed her and we said, do you want to just try the mule for today? So she did, and she was like, right, I'm staying, I want this.
That's so funny.
Yeah, so yeah, they're also amazing. And then so yeah, I mean the horses that we ride for the treks and stuff are really incredible. I think they're some of the best kind of trekking horses I've ever ridden, just because of how responsive they are. And then obviously the Polo Ponies are fantastic, but they're a standard breed, and a lot of them have been brought in from Argentina. But they've got a big breeding program out there at the moment, and some of the first young horses from Colombia have just played in the US Open, so it's a huge kind of deal for them. And they're Colombian bred polo ponies, so that's really exciting. And then I guess you've got just your standard, because they will have imported a lot of horses, which would be kind of the show jumpers and all of that kind of stuff. But if you're looking for a real Colombian horse, you need to get a Colombian Criollo, and they are super, super fun to ride.
Wow. So, I know in my travels, I've had situations where, because of horses, I felt like I got to see the country in such a unique way that I think normal travelers wouldn't. So do you have like maybe a story or something where you had a moment like that? Like, wow, if not for horses, I never would have done this or been here or saw that.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I think part of it is kind of how you interact with other people as well. So when if you travel with people in a car or, anything like that, you kind of get, or even like or other forms of transport, people are often going at different paces, as if you're walking, for example, or if you're in a car or motorbikes or whatever, you can't really talk to each other as much. Whereas on horses, there's something about being on a horse that relaxes people. I think. So you've got the whole day to relax, enjoy, and ride. And so people start having much more kind of conversation between each other, which I think is one of the really, really cool things I love about going on these riding holidays.
And it's usually like deep, serious conversations too. It's not like, how's the weather? It's like meaningful.
So you really get to know people. And that's one of the things that's super, because you start the day, you get on a horse, and that's it for the day, right? Whatever you're going to see or explore is going to be because you have the whole day ahead of you. You've got no phone signal most of the time, so everyone's having this great time. And for sure, the ride we just did is pretty extraordinary in terms of what you get to see, because you start off in these low, lush valleys. And I mean, I guess the comments from people was pretty much, I've never seen green like this. Because Colombia doesn't get seasons. So for the whole year, you've got this perfect kind of environment, I suppose. And so the grass is this lush, lush green. And then you kind of start climbing up into the mountains, and you go through forests. And these forests, I mean, I guess if you wanted to hike them, that would be probably the only other way you could do it, but you'd never cover the same distance that you can cover on horses. And that's the beauty of these horses. And as you get higher and higher, the landscape in Colombia is incredible, and there's no one else around. So you can kind of see these little farms, but other than the locals that really live and breathe in the countryside, there's just us. And you can tell that because if you ride past, for example, a country school, the kids all like jump up out of their seats and run outside to see you and your horses. So they're obviously not used to seeing all these Westerners kind of gallivanting through. But for me, the really special bit, which would be incredibly hard to do any other way than on the horses, is it's this desert. It's a mountain desert that's just in front of a place called Villa de Leyva. So as you have to climb up, like really high up into the mountains, and you come back down. It's obviously quite kind of slippy. So I think even hiking, there were bits of the trail that I was like, I can even do this on my feet. Like, I'm glad I've got like my mule to get me through this. And it's so beautiful because none of us know why. I'm sure there is a reason, but this mountain range doesn't get rain, and it hasn't had any rain for the last 60 years. So I think 60 years ago was probably the first time it had anything. But if you look across to the town of Villa de Leyva, if you look on the other side, there is tropical rainforests.
Okay.
So you've got this, it's kind of like a mind-blowing, slightly bizarre
contrast.
Contrast. Yeah. And it's just so beautiful. And it's interesting because you kind of think desert and you're like, oh, it's quite boring, flat and nothingness. But this is incredible because it's all up in the mountains and you can see for miles and miles and miles. And I think that was probably all of our favorite day because it's just such a contrast and you just, there was no one, it was us in the mountains. That was it. We saw no one else.
And are you guys camping or what's the sleeping situation?
No, so we, it's great actually. So we stay in old haciendas. So they're like traditional farmhouses. So we completely got them to ourselves. We actually, one night we stayed in a monastery, which again, we were the only people there. And it's just, I mean, it's nice because you're staying, if you chat to the guys that own these haciendas and stuff, the stories that they have are fantastic. And the beds are really comfy. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of, I would say it's definitely not really high-end luxury, but it's really nice. So they're like really beautiful, traditional old farmhouses. But you're staying in, yeah, I guess, because the traditional, so this is again where kind of tourism's kind of catching up with Colombia, but the Colombians, the way they used to do these routes, it was called the Caravan Route. So they'd kind of go from Bogota all the way up to Villa de Leyva, because Villa de Leyva used to be the original capital of Bogota. So it's quite a good, not the route we take on the horses, but I guess for the travelers, so the places we stay in, they'd have stayed in similar places along the way, but they'd all cram in. So you'd imagine having like a bunk beds in all the rooms and stuff. So a lot of the rooms we only ever put 2 people in a room, but they'll often have like 3 beds. And you'll be like, why is there so many beds in this room? But yeah, it's and what we have this amazing chef called Danny, and he is just a genius. So we'll have picnic lunches up on the mountains, and he'll meet us with beer and wine and something that he's cooked, which is always delicious. And then in the evenings we get incredible soups and home cooked food. We have steak. The food is really, really good.
And how long are you spending in the saddle?
Actually, well, we longer than you think. So I think we did 36 hours in 6 days. So it's average of 6 hours a day.
And are you guys covering a lot of ground, or is it because it's so, I don't know, rocky terrain, or?
Yeah, it depends on the day. So because all the days are really different. Like some days you get to have a lot more countering, whereas some days obviously it's tricky with the terrain. So that then we're obviously covering slightly less distance. But I don't think we covered that far. Not actually sure what it is in kilometers. I can definitely find out. But it's like 6 hours roughly in the saddle each day. And I think the first day, I don't know if you experience this when you do your rides, but like the first day is usually the worst, right? Because your bum is kind of getting used to being in the saddle for that long. And then after like day 2, you're fine.
Yeah, and are the saddles like the traditional saddles, or are they English saddles, or what do they use in Colombia?
Yeah, so super interesting. The guy that owns the farm, he, as his university project, actually made all the saddles that we use. So he specifically designed a saddle that was perfect, that was the most comfortable for the horse and the rider. So it's this kind of hybrid Western saddle. But it's really, really comfy. So it's got loads and loads of padding in, but it's very light for the horse. And it's got a bar on the front, so in the Western style. So it's.
And is that sort of like what the locals, what are they riding in? I mean.
So yeah, the locals they have a traditional Western they have a traditional Western saddle as well. So that's more like, I guess you'd have Western cattle riding.
Okay, so it's kind of gaucho style.
Yeah, exactly. And then obviously if they're show jumping, they have the show jumping saddles, polo.
Yeah.
But I guess the traditional kind of countryside saddle would be your Western saddle.
Cool. Okay, so you've traveled to, you said many other places, and now you're kind of reaching out to others. What are maybe some of your, obviously you love Colombia. Do you have any other like favorite countries that you enjoy riding?
I think probably after Colombia it would be Mongolia. Have you ever been there?
Yes, of course. Mongolia is definitely a special place. So what is it that you loved about Mongolia?
I think it's the openness of the country. So I don't think I found anywhere else in the world. Probably, I mean, you've got kind of like the Kazakhstan regions, those kind of places that are quite similar. But Mongolia, there's just, the horses are such fun to ride. Like, they're so tiny. And they're so fun.
Yeah.
And you can just go for miles and miles and miles and miles with nothing.
Yeah.
So
no fences.
Yeah, no fences, no walls, nothing. You're just constantly like going for such a long distance. And the horses can, carry you for really long distances. And I don't know, I guess we've been going there for 4 years now. And it's one of those countries that people go to and I don't think they can, even if they've seen pictures and videos and everything, they just can't imagine it being like that.
Right.
I suppose.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, I agree. It's one of those, you have to go there to really experience it, Have you ever had a difficult situation or something that was maybe scary that happened in your travels? And then what did you do to overcome that situation?
Trying to think. I think in terms of just personally, or with when I'm traveling with other people.
In general, probably traveling with people is in itself a challenge on its own.
So. Yeah, absolutely. No, I think usually the situations I get myself into when I'm by myself. So stuff I might be like, this seems like a really good idea, and then later you kind of go, was that such a sensible idea? And it usually works out in the end and ends with a really good story. So I think like the one that probably pops to mind most is when I was in Colombia the very first time I went to visit Jean, we went to Cartagena, and
which isn't that like known for being kind of a sketchy place?
No, Cartagena's lovely. So it's probably the most touristy place in Colombia.
Okay.
So it's in the Caribbean coast, and I tend to try and avoid it because it is so touristy.
Okay.
So I kind of think if you want to go, it's not particularly difficult to do on your own.
Okay.
But, but we went, and one of the nice things to do from Cartagena is to go out to the islands. And we'd arrived, we were really tired, and when we got up, we said, okay, when's the boat going to the islands? And they're like, tomorrow. We're like, oh, okay. And so we went into town and just kind of went, oh, well, never mind. And this Colombian lady came over, like a big mama. She was like, "Hi, girls, do you wanna go to the islands?" We're like, "This is fate." Like, yes, let's go. And so we went and bought a couple of bottles of rum and went and got in a taxi with this lady, which in itself was a bit dumb. And like off we went. And Jean was like, "No, the marina's like the other direction." And we're like, "Oh, okay. Well, where are we going?" And she did, in fairness, take us to this like this bay, and it had. Yeah, so it was, and it had all these fishing boats. these two big guys were like, yeah, okay, we'll take you in this tiny boat. So in we hopped, and we're like, I'm sure it'll be fine, right?
So wait, you're two ladies getting on a sketchy fishing boat.
Yeah.
And no red flags are waving at this point.
No, it's fine, you know. Why not? If they're gonna get us there, it's all good. And this trip's meant to take like 20 minutes. And so we're off into the sea. And so off we go, like bobbing along. And after about 40 minutes, we can't see land anymore. We're just like, what is going on? And at this point, neither of us spoke very good Spanish. And then the guy in the front grabbed a life jacket and lobbed it to the guy in the back and put one on himself, but didn't give us anything. And we were like, oh no. Then we see in the distance this like little boat like bobbing towards us, and it's got black sails. We were just like, this is the end.
It's a pirate ship.
Yeah, exactly. Pirate ship. They're coming to get us. We've got some rum. Maybe we can do an exchange. And it kind of, the pirate ship bobbed past and didn't actually do anything. So I think the guys were obviously in the boat worried that it might, which is why they put their own life jackets on.
Right.
And then
so they were going to bail and leave you ladies to fend for yourselves.
100%. Like they were out of that. But yeah, we managed to get to not the right island. We were on a very different beach with no tourists, which actually ended up being lovely. But we managed to find a couple of hammocks and we had a big party. So yeah, no, it was in the end, it ended up being one of the best nights I've had in Colombia, because we went swimming in the sea, and the plankton was just, there was millions of them. So you like moved your hands through the sea, and the whole sea would just shine. So yeah, it was a pretty incredible night. And also the fact we'd survived. I think we were on.
And then how did you guys make your way back off of the island?
We actually, well, because we were properly stuck at this point because there were no boats taking us back. So we had to I think we managed to get motorbikes like for an hour to this place where we could get this ferry across to somewhere else. And then we had to get a taxi. It was an absolute, like, that was the worst. The journey back was a nightmare, but we got there. So it's all good.
Wow, sounds amazing.
Yeah, it was fun.
So do you have any sort of last, I don't know, advice or final tips for ladies that might be interested in traveling to Colombia?
Yeah, I think one, don't be scared. Like, it's an incredible country. It's definitely worth doing. I mean, get in touch, and we'd be really, really happy to help you with any questions that you've got about Colombia. So I think kind of getting a bit of advice about where to go and how to do it is always helpful. But my advice would be go. Don't miss this one. There's so much to see in Colombia, and we do. I think that's the thing. Like, if there's something specific you want to do, the really nice thing about Colombia is it's always possible. You just have to ask.
Perfect. Very good. And where can people reach you or find you or follow you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've got a website called Adastra Adventures, and we can put a link. I can give you a link for that, and then either via email or phone. Can we put a link on for those, or? Yeah,
I can put some links in the show notes, definitely. Do you want to just maybe spell Adastra just so people can?
Yeah, sure. So it's Adastra.
Okay.
And then Adventures.
Perfect.
But yeah, go have a look on there, and just feel free to get in touch. I'm always happy to chat about Colombia and kind of give you some advice, and yeah, see if we can get you on an adventure out there.
Well, great. Thank you for coming on and sharing your stories. And it was very nice talking to you. And we will definitely keep following along on your adventures.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Did Kat's story make your feet itch? Do you want to find amazing horse riding places all around the world? Then make your dreams come true with our free download, Horse Riding in Every Country. This directory features over 400 stables in over 180 different countries. Actually, a lot more than that. You have been listening to the Equestrian Adventuresses podcast. Please subscribe to our channel and check out our website, equestrianadventuresses.com, for links to the show notes. leave us a review, and consider becoming a premium member for bonus episodes and footage. More information can be found on our website. Until next time, adventuresses, happy trails.